Hello, and welcome to Making Moves, where each week myself, Ross Hastings, and Kieran Antil get together to discuss a company somewhere in the world that has been making moves, repositioning in their industry that week, for better or for worse. Always from a list of possible examples or possible cases that are sent to us by our team at very short notice. Always unscripted, always unedited, and always, where possible, under 15 minutes. So therefore, always ably supported with some sort of psychostimulant in liquid form. So what are you sipping on this week, Kieran?
I do not recommend, but I am drinking Rainstorm.
Rainstorm?
Which I did not expect a kiwi fruit or an apple to somehow. That just feels like somehow it should be some kind of game chess piece or something, a kiwi blend. Plant-based energy, ginseng was what got me, but utter crap.
The pun's not great either. If it
No,
even is a
there's
pun.
so many things I'm just disappointed with. But
can you guess what I'm drinking?
I want to believe that you got the Mandarin one of these or whatever they came. Hey, there we go. That makes sense.
I am on Coke Zero Sugar, and as it happens, a legacy brand. Legacy
yes.
branding of Coke Zero Sugar.
That takes me back to the old days. Tuesday.
Yes. So today we are talking about Coca-Cola. And Coke specifically rebuilding and rolling out a new global visual identity under the kind of banner or tag of Make Coca-Cola More Coca-Cola. And this is interesting because, framed as a repositioning of sorts, got this global rollout, new visual identity and stuff like that. But really, when you dig beneath the surface, it's got this nice, catchy, Make Coca-Cola More Coca-Cola. There's a lot of talk about getting back to brand codes, getting back to what Coca-Cola's all about. And it's a consistency play, right? Global reach, as we know, global distribution of Coke, local market, kind of campaigns and activation, multiple agencies, multiple teams all over the world bringing this brand to life. So there's this idea of kind of consistency as a system that they're rolling out, codifying things. And underpinning all of that is being able to use AI to play a part in efficiently rolling out the brand and being able to rely on those codified assets to roll out that kind of scaled. It's what we talk about a lot, isn't it? That kind of consistent, high quality at scale, and there is not really any scale that rivals Coke's in that context. So, what are your first thoughts?
Well, I mean, I feel like this fits into this, positioning as, they're not moving, they're reestablishing exactly where they are. They are arguably the most iconic brand. And they are reestablishing the same thing. And to the most people aren't, this isn't going to hit the radar. This is like big news that no one would care about. This is an operational decision. It is as you say, consistency. I think there's a lot of talk always about distinctive assets. It's not like that's new to a brand like Coca-Cola. It is, how do we remain consistent? I think in a lot of the press releases and some of the interviews around it, I think there's a word drift used, which I really like, which is just, look, any brand, no matter how disciplined they are, there's a level of drift that happens. And that's not because bad ideas, it's actually probably because of good ideas. Like people go, oh, what if we did this in this market? What if we also added that? Or there's this new thing now, we can do this. And so, it's that constant drift away from the efficiencies of the brand. And then these moments you see these brands are just retightening back up those things and learning on what they've done. and even sort of going back to things that they've done before. So a lot is in here is about things like turning the Coca-Cola typography, particularly on the cans, where before they were sort of doing them sideways, moving using 2 or 3 cans that would sort of sit next to each other on shelf or in the advertising. That's a great idea. It just gets old after a while, and lots of people copy it. And so they're actually going back to an old idea. It's not necessarily better or worse, but it is new in the way fashion goes around. I think a lot of these things. The biggest, there's not big steps here at all. They're literally going back to the DNA of what we are, and that I think is probably the lesson. Is particularly in the age of AI, when you want to scale these things, you can do so many things. So even now, smaller brands need to kind of say, okay, what makes us us, and what are we going to be investing in? And the red of Coca-Cola is almost the 101 of distinctive assets, where like you pick a color. But brands like an Apple or a Nike, they don't have a color. They use arguably more sophisticated brand codes. But Coca-Cola has that red, but then it's got all those other layers and sophistication that sits on it as well. And all those have design principles that need to be hashed out, agreed upon, and codified.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned distinctive brand assets, you mentioned brand codes, and you mentioned codified. And I think we often use distinctive brand assets, brand codes kind of interchangeably, synonymously sometimes. But what I find is interesting here is that, like you said, Coke, arguably some of the most distinctive brand assets, ever. But this is really about the next wave of codifying those distinctive brand assets, not only for people and different people in different cultures, internally and externally, globally, over 200 plus markets to bring to life consistently, but now AI as well. So how do we codify something for both people and AI to understand and to roll out? And I think that's really interesting. And like you said, there's a real underlying narrative of discipline with Coke, right? It's, sticking to what's true and what works, not reinventing for the sake of reinventing. When you do try something new, not being afraid to retract to what's, like you said, where it's been before or what you've done before. And I think that's really interesting in this case study. Codifying those distinctive brand assets, there's a real discipline of bringing things back to simplifying them rather than trying to overcomplicate things.
It is, and I think the area of, let's talk about the anatomy of marketing of all things. This is around the brand governance. That's what this is about. It's like, so it is, okay, you've gone and done a rebrand, you've done some branding. How are you going to manage this thing? And that same, those questions are sort of, obviously Coca-Cola is operating on a larger scale across multiple markets, but they're looking from an operational point of view. They're looking from an FTE point of view, even like, how many bloody creative directors do we need across every market to do all these different things? And I guess it raises that question of like, do these constrain creativity? And they would only constrain it if you become brand police and you think more like a brand style guide, a static thing on page 22 is what we do. With AI, and even before AI, with a lot of software that's being more and more automated, it's really that sort of that language of brand design system. It is something that's dynamic and evolving and changing. So there's still those opportunities for markets to go, well, let's try this. What do you think about this? And then teach the system, hey, let's do this. And then evolve it and bring it across other things. So it's learning in real time and being able to do those things. But even at the complexity, well, actually maybe more to the point of the complexity of Coca-Cola and across those markets, you don't have that many assets. It's a handful of things that you have to control with absolute discipline, versus I think there's this sort of hunger to like do more and different and all these things. At the end of the day, yeah, do lots of things, but they need to be cut from the same, code, so to speak.
Well, and that links to one of the kind of interesting sub-narratives or kind of decisions that has been made within this move, which is around Coke Zero and some of the other variants, where I think, interestingly, when they were spawned, they were almost like a a sub, I mean, clearly endorsed, but kind of a sub-brand of sorts. Quite distinctively different, I guess, designed to sit parallel and adjacent shelf space wise to the core product. I mean, I'm biased because I shop in a certain market, but certainly in the market I shop in, and I am a consumer of Coke Zero, it now is taking more shelf space. It seems to be more prominent than the core Coke product itself. And one of the things they've done is bring that sub-brand far more back towards the master brand, and just as a very subtle product variant now, as opposed to a separate sub-brand, which might bring its own challenges from a consumer perspective in terms of choice, picking up the wrong can or the wrong bottle. But it is interesting now that they've brought that back much closer to that kind of traditional distinctive brand asset of Coke.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really that idea of a sort of master brand as well. Like, you can, Coke Zero is becoming so large that ultimately you end up having to manage it and have different variants for it and different signage for it. And as something like that becomes larger and larger, it is again a more operational efficiency to have the singular thing that you need to sort of explain.
Absolutely. And you've looked at some of the other kind of design considerations, some of the actual changes they've made. What are some of those that you've noticed?
Probably one of the key ones is just sort of this idea of a square, which doesn't seem revolutionary, but again, while it's so simple, I like, in a lot of the work we do, I like this sort of terminology of you building a robust design system. If it's too delicate, you can't roll it out across multiple materials, formats, markets, because it's too complicated to apply. So it's a square works, and they show that in some of the work where it is sort of like, it works on a bottle opener, it works sort of on a cube, it works on an ice cube.
Ice cube is a nice one, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, ultimately, you think, the genius sometimes is in the simplicity of these things, and the painstaking decision making they do over the millimeters is because the effects can be incredibly large across a brand like that. And most businesses and brands don't have that ability to spend that much time on all those little decisions. But what they can pick up is we need to know what our things are, and we need to figure out how to keep consistent. But consistent does not mean static.
Yeah. And overall, what are your thoughts? What's your prophecy? Is this a good move by Coke? Is it a smart repositioning?
I think these are experts in branding doing what they do. There's no surprises here. It's well principled, well considered rollout of those things. I think it ultimately will mean a lot of people's jobs, to be honest, because if you can get that ruthless efficiencies across markets, you all of a sudden do not need as many people. But I think that is a much bigger conversation.
It's interesting as well. I mean, momentarily, well, perhaps more than momentarily, I don't know. I haven't read anywhere I know where they're starting with a few markets, but how long is it going to take it to roll out globally? And weirdly, it's going to create quite a large amount of inconsistency for a short period of time until they roll out the new stuff. But of course, it's close enough to where it was to not be jarring, which I guess is part of the consideration with a brand like this. So as we enter the last minute or so of our time, as always, I'll hand over to you for your concise learning for anyone watching today from today's case study. What's the key takeaway?
Key takeaway, I would say, is I would be mindful of your drift.
There you go. Very nice. All right. Cheers. All right. Until next week.
Don't drink this. Don't drink this.
Cheers.